Why does some traders spend 15 years in this game and never move an inch, while others find real stability in 3? It isn't intelligence. It isn't a secret strategy. It isn't the market playing favorites. So what is it? The answer is almost too small to take seriously, and that's exactly why most traders never find it. Habit 1. They get 1% less wrong, not 1% more right. Most traders are hunting for a breakthrough, a better system, one perfect trade, a single home run that changes everything. But when was the last time one trade actually changed your life? The market doesn't reward drama. It rewards small, boring improvement, repeated for years. A trader doesn't collapse because of one loss. They collapse because every day they bend the plan a little. Enter a touch early, hold a losing position a touch too long, justify it a touch more than yesterday. None of it hurts immediately. That's what makes it dangerous. It accumulates in silence, and one day the confidence is gone, and nobody can point to the single moment it happened, because there wasn't one. Psychologists call this the difference between outcome goals and process goals, and the research keeps landing in the same place. People anchored to the process outlast people anchored to results, because a process goal survives a bad week and a results goal doesn't. So, here's the real question. What would change if today you weren't trying to trade brilliantly, just trying to be 1% less wrong than yesterday? Habit 2. They know why they're actually here before the market decides for them. Ask yourself honestly, why are you trading? Freedom? Escape from a job you dread? Those reasons aren't wrong, but they're thin, and thin reasons crack the first time the market leans on them. Here's what's actually happening underneath. When money is the only reason you're here, every loss stops being just a loss. It becomes a threat to who you think you are. And a threatened identity is precisely what floods your system with stress hormones and wrecks your judgment in the moment you need it most. A mature trader asks a different question before the session even opens. Not, how much will the market give me today, but what am I actually training today? Patience? The ability to sit inside a loss without needing to immediately undo it. When the goal turns inward, the market quietly loses its grip on you. Habit 3. They stop before the whisper gets loud. There's a moment right before every blown-up account, the just one more trade moment. And in the second it happens, it always feels completely reasonable. But is it? After a win, dopamine spikes and risk starts looking smaller than it is. After a loss, cortisol rises and the brain stops hunting for opportunity and starts hunting for relief. In both states, you're still watching the chart, still clicking the mouse, but ask yourself, is the version of you making that decision actually thinking long-term, or is a chemical reaction wearing your face? Professional traders aren't calmer because they feel less greed or less fear. They're calmer because they notice it arriving early and they leave the desk right then, before it gets to decide anything. Habit 4. They look straight at failure instead of burying it. What do you actually do the moment after a bad trade? Do you look at it or do you look away? Most traders hide, a vague line in the journal, blaming the market, switching strategies fast enough that they never have to sit with what just happened. But a mistake you don't examine doesn't vanish. It waits, and it comes back wearing the disguise of a habit instead of a decision. This tracks closely with research on mindset from psychologist Dweck, who found that people who treat a setback as information tend to grow from it, while people who treat it as a verdict on who they are tend to freeze. One blown account, looked at honestly, can teach more about risk than 100 books. So the question isn't whether you'll break. Everyone breaks eventually. The question is, when you do, will you look or will you hide? Habit 5. They build a system so they don't have to be strong every single day. Have you noticed how willpower feels endless on a good day and completely absent on a bad one? That's not a character flaw. Psychologist Baumeister's research on self-control found that willpower behaves less like a fixed trait and more like a muscle that fatigues with repeated use across the day. If every trading decision requires you to force yourself into discipline, you will eventually fail, not because you're weak, but because nobody can force themselves indefinitely without the tank running dry. Mature traders stop treating discipline as a fight and start treating it as protection. A system that still works even on the day you're tired, distracted, or 3 losses deep. What would your trading actually look like if the hardest decisions were already made before the emotional moment even arrived? Habit. They can survive the silence. What do you do on the days when nothing is happening? Really sit with that. For a lot of traders, a quiet chart doesn't feel peaceful, it feels unbearable. And that discomfort is exactly what invents a trade that was never really there. Is that a market read, or is that just boredom in disguise? The human brain doesn't like empty stretches. It wants stimulation. And in trading, every tiny flicker on the screen becomes an excuse to convince yourself something is happening when nothing actually is. The traders who last aren't glued to their screens hunting for action. They're the ones who can sit in the quiet without needing to manufacture something to feel useful. Could it be that the hardest skill here was never reading a chart, but simply being still long enough to let a real setup arrive? Habit 7. They measure themselves in years, not in today. Here's a question worth sitting with. If you kept trading exactly the way you are right now, would you still be doing this in 2 years? In 5? Most people who leave this game don't lack the skill. They just run out of psychological runway before that skill ever had the chance to compound. A mature trader stops asking how much they made this month and starts asking something quieter. Does the way I'm trading right now let me still be here a year from now? If the honest answer is no, they're willing to change course even while they're still profitable because they understand something most people never do. Survival isn't the opposite of ambition here, it's the prerequisite for it. A losing trade stops being proof that you're incompetent and becomes just one small data point in a very long sequence. Notice something about all 7 of these. Not one of them is about reading charts better or predicting where price goes next. Every single one is about what happens inside you in the seconds before and after a decision. That's not an accident. The market itself is neutral. It simply amplifies whatever's already sitting underneath the surface. If you're impatient, trading will expose it within days. Every session isn't really a place to make money. It's a place that quietly tests whether today you'll keep the promises you made to yourself yesterday. None of these 7 habits make a good highlight reel. Nobody screenshots, "I chose not to trade today," and posts it. But maybe that's exactly the answer to the question we opened with. What if the traders who make it aren't smarter, luckier, or more gifted, just less willing to hand themselves one more small permission to self-destruct? What if the whole difference between 15 years stuck and 3 years stable was never a strategy at all? So, of the 7, which one is actually yours to fix first?